there's a small percentage of production of food in Italy, which is amazing, of really high quality. But unfortunately, meat especially is mass produced in intensive farms all over Europe.
This is Italian for Sure, the podcast about Italian culture. I'm your host, Catrin Skaperdas, an American living in Italy. And I interview Italians who passionately share their wisdom, stories, and insights about Italian culture. Welcome to Italian for Sure, Pablo.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you here.
Nice one.
Could you introduce yourself? Maybe tell us where in Italy you're from and a little bit about you?
Right. Yeah, so I was born in Milan in 1981, so a while ago.
Not so long ago.
Well, I can feel the age now. But yeah, 1981, Milan. So it was a different time. It was also a different city. Milan was definitely more industrial and grey back in the days. Now it became, because like the kind of like fashion industry kind of like exploded in the 80s and 90s. And that kind of like revolutionized the city and gave a different outlook maybe to the city. And then in the last 10 years as well, I've really noticed a change in the city that it became way more international. It's just offering so much more compared when I was living here, growing up here. But yeah, and then when I was about 23 years old, my idea was to go to Barcelona to spend the summer there, do some jobs. And then my best friend at the time, he told me, no, I got a ticket to go to London. Why don't you come with me? And I was like, really, London? London, I mean, it's cool. I love London, but it's great. The food is not amazing. And I said, why are we not going to Barcelona? We could have a great time in summer. And then, no, come to London. So I said, okay, fine. I'm coming to London with you. And then that was 19 years ago, and I'm still in London. I obviously come back home to Milan very often, at least, twice or three times a year, depending at the time, like at the moment now, because I'm also launching a film. So we've been coming here a lot, every once a month, really. Even though I've been away for like 18 years, I still feel a really strong connection to Italy. And every time I'm back here, I just feel I'm at home, basically.
That's interesting that you talked about feeling still such a strong connection to Italy. It's the question I wanted to ask you. As an Italian, if say you lived in London for the rest of your life and you're, 100 years old and someone asks you, where you're from or if you introduced yourself, would you say that you're Italian, do you think?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%. I mean, first of all, like the accent will give it away. Sometimes I can pass as an English person, if I don't speak. But then the moment I open my mouth,
that's the same for me with Italian.
Exactly,
sometimes I pass,
exactly.
People start talking to me very fast in Italian, and I'm like, I know I look a little Italian, but I'm learning Italian. But
True.
Yeah, Italians speak very fast.
Yeah, you do definitely look Italian, and sometimes I could look a bit, kind of like European or. Not necessarily like Italian, but yeah, I definitely like going back to your question. Definitely, I think because I grew up here and I stayed for like 20 years. I think that your identity is kind of formed in the place where you grew up. So even though I will probably live abroad for the rest of my life, I will definitely always feel Italian and probably introduce myself as an Italian person to everybody, because I think that's my heritage, that's my culture. And you kind of don't lose that. It's difficult because if some people that are maybe of Italian origins and they grew up abroad, they have that mixed feeling of neither feeling, Italian or neither feeling America or German, wherever they're living. But because I think that because I grew up here, that's where, as I said, my identity was born and built, basically. So that's, it's stuck with me probably all my life.
Absolutely.
Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't know.
I know, same for me with being American. But no, I can relate in that, I grew up Greek American, I guess you would say. And all my life I grew up saying I'm Greek, but within America, because Americans understand. I'm not saying I'm from Greece. I'm saying that my ancestors, immigrated here from Greece. Same thing with Italian American culture. But I have funny stories from Italians here who tell me they went to America and they'll say, "Oh, I'm Italian," and then an American will say, "I'm Italian too," and then they'll immediately switch to Italian, and they're like, "Oh, no, I don't speak Italian." And they had to learn that people say I'm Italian, but they actually mean that their ancestry is Italian, that they're not born and raised here. But then I meet people, I've met people here, and specifically there was one person I asked actually to be on the podcast. And the podcast is specifically, I would like to interview Italian people born and raised here. And I asked, and he said, "Well, I think I'm not a good fit because I haven't lived in Italy for the past 15 years and I just came back." And I thought that was very interesting because I'm like, well, it's funny because in America, people will say they're Italian because their great grandparents immigrated, and you left just 15 years. And he's saying, "No, I don't think I'm a good fit."
I think in America it's probably slightly different because, everybody in America in a way is from somewhere else,
right?
Originally.
Except for Native Americans. But
yes, exactly. But, all the other people there, they're either from, they got German background, English background, Italian, Greek, Irish, whatever. So I guess that's why it's normal for you to introduce yourself as a Greek, or for an American Italian to introduce himself as an Italian, even if they probably never been into that country. They have almost no connection to the language or the culture. But I guess it's almost a matter of identity for them to say, this is where my ancestors are from. While probably here in Europe is slightly different, because even if so for instance, I live in England and there's so many Italian there, but all the Italians there, they were not born in England. They're all Italians born and raised in Italy that then moved to England for some reason. And I mean, people in Europe, they fought for centuries against each other. So I guess even though now with the European Union, we all feel European, but at the same time, we speak different languages. We have completely different cultures that are very, they go back centuries, So I think that your cultural identity is really ingrained in you, and it's different to get rid of it, basically.
People in Italy sometimes tell me, when I tell them I'm American, and specifically I'm from New York, really outside of New York, but if I say New York, they think the city. They tell me, "Why did you leave New York City? Why did you leave New York? Why did you come here?" And then people in the US, when I tell them I live in Italy, I think they think that I live in a movie. I live on vacation all the time. They're like, "That's a dream. That's amazing." Do you have the similar experience in living in London and saying you're Italian?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. My friends here, or people here, they always yeah, it's amazing you moved to London. It's such a great city, so international, and blah, blah, blah. But then when I'm in England, everybody's like, "Why are you here?" They're all like, "Why are you here, mate?" It's like, why did you come to this country? It's like, the food is a bit rubbish. The weather is a bit rubbish. Yes, it's cool. It's a nice city, but, everybody's like, Italy's way better, basically. But then obviously, I think that every country, every place in the world has got its own pro and cons. And, although yes, Italy, it's an amazing place to live and everything, but it doesn't offer as much, as other cities like London or New York. So it depends, what you're looking for in life. Probably, I don't know what I'm looking for in life, but, I'm in London for the moment, and I love it. I love London at the same time. And it's a kind of love and hate relationship. And it's the same thing with Italy. I mean, I love Italy, but then so many things drive me crazy about Italy. And
Poste.
Exactly. All the bureaucracy. And the other day I was flying back from London to Italy because I needed to do a presentation of the film. And the flight was cancelled. And of course, the agency that booked me the flight booked it through with the ITA, the Italian airline company. Flight was cancelled. It was total mayhem. And I was like, oh my gosh, welcome back to Italy. I was still in London, but I have to deal with the Italian bureaucracy, a way of thinking and living. So I was like, for these things, I'm way happier to be in London, not to be here. But,
Pros and cons. I mean, if there was a perfect place to live, hopefully we could all live there, but
Exactly.
pros and cons. Well, you mentioned, you're from Milan, and you mentioned how Milan has changed over the years. And you also mentioned a little bit about food, maybe how food's different in London where you live now and maybe in Italy, but more specifically Milan. And I would love for you to share a little bit about Milan and Lombardia as a region, Lombardy as a region, a little bit about what it's like maybe compared to the other regions in Italy, and then the food. What's the food like in Lombardy?
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Lombardy is probably kind of atypical for Italy in a way that it's like the identity, like the kind of like stereotype that people have abroad of Italians is definitely not what people in Milan, they don't really fit in. Milan is definitely a more international city in Italy. And also like the way you're thinking is very business-minded compared to the rest. So like some Italians, they think, okay, Italy, Lombardy and Milan is not really Italy in a way. Obviously it is, because it's still got like it's very Italian identity. But then at the same time, it kind of like look more to Europe. And so it's not that much different from other cities like European capitals like Paris or Berlin. So Milan is really, really different from Rome, Naples, Florence. But I guess in a way also Italy, if you go back to the history of Italy, after the fall of the Roman Empire, Italy was divided into lots of different counties and duchies, and so every region developed its own kind of identity, which translated also into food. So like Italian food is not just pasta and pizza. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I love all the other Italian foods as well.
No, I know, but like the stereotype abroad is that we all eat just pasta and pizza. But there's so much like the variety of food in Italy is actually quite amazing. And I'm not saying that as an Italian. It's because it's one of the few countries. There's probably like Italy, India, Japan, that they have like a culinary tradition that is so vast and so diverse as well. So if depending on which region you go to Italy, you will eat completely different food.
Which is nice. I mean, when I go to different regions in Italy, I almost feel like, not that I'm leaving a different country or leaving to go to a different country, but I feel truly like I'm on vacation. When I go to Piemonte, for example, Piedmont, I'm eating entirely different foods, although that's a very close region. But it's funny how even regions that are very close to each other have very different foods still.
Yeah.
Or I'm looking forward to going to Puglia, for example, because I've never been and I know that they have different food and I can't wait to try it.
Yeah. And even within the same region, they have different food. So like different cities in the same region have different food. Like, so for instance, let's take Lombardy for an example. In the north, on the Alps, where the food is completely different. It's obviously way heavier because, it's got to do with the weather. Like, so on the Alps, the weather is much colder. So there's so much more like cheese, heavier food.
Is there meat? Yeah, I was going to say meat.
And, all sorts of... like polenta is a very traditional food from the north, from Lombardy. I don't know if you ever tried it.
I have.
Yes.
I hike a lot. So often at the rifugi, there's always polenta and some sort of meat.
Yes. And like, the food in Bormio, which is just a couple of hours from Milan on the Alps. So like the traditional food there is like polenta, then you got pizzoccheri, which is a kind of... I don't know even how to describe it. It's almost like a pasta, but it's not real pasta. It's kind of like brown. I think it's made with spelt flour, and then it's mixed with vegetables and cheese, melted cheese.
Lots of cheese.
Lots of cheese. There's this other thing called chat, which are kind of like small bowl of they're deep fried bowl of cheese.
Oh yeah,
which
those
is
are
amazing.
On the menu as well.
Very, very light, but. But again, it's to do with the weather, because on the Alps the weather is obviously colder. You need some heavier food, while in Milan is it's different. In Milan, we traditionally, for centuries, the crops are mainly rice crops. So risotto, which is a very, it's a traditional rice from this area. So the rice that you would use for risotto is a different, it's called arborio or carnaroli. And it's a different type of rice that you would use to make any other rice plate for other cuisine. And, for instance, we have so the traditional Milanese risotto is with the saffron. And some people also put sausages inside as well. But so it's yellow, strong yellow risotto with saffron. It's amazing. I grew up eating that. When I was little, actually, I was obsessed with it, but I didn't call it risotto alla milanese. I would just call it risotto giallo, which means the yellow risotto. As a child, that's how I would say it.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I kind of brought this tradition to London. So my daughter, she loves risotto with saffron.
Aww.
And but it's very difficult to find saffron in England. I've no idea why, but so every time I come to Milan, I always bring back some.
That's your luggage, just full of saffron.
Full of saffron, basically. So we can carry on for a few months eating saffron. And then, so the tradition, and then so for instance, in the more southern area of Lombardy, there's also gnocco fritto, which is very famous.
And in gnocco fritto, but is that because I'm thinking Parma, which is Emilia Romagna?
Yes, actually, the gnocco fritto is from Piacenza.
I'm learning.
Originally, which is just half an hour from Milan.
And that's part of Lombardy.
Yes, it's only half an hour from Milan. And then, obviously, the gnocco fritto then is also eaten in Emilia Romagna, which is the next door region. Some of the recipes, they kind of crossed, of course, cross region, yeah. But there's also some different tweaks in the way they're making it, or sometimes in a region they make the same plate, but it's maybe lighter or heavier, depending on the But I love gnocco fritto is this kind of it's not gnocchi, it's completely different. I don't even know how to describe it. It's almost like kind of bread
with a lot of air inside.
Exactly, it's very empty inside, but it's fried. But they literally deep fried it for literally a few seconds. I think it stays in for 10 seconds, and then they take it out, and then inside is all full of air. So the whole idea is that you open it, and then you stuff it with whatever you want, prosciutto, cheese, anything.
Oh gosh, I love Italy. So we're talking about prosciutto. You mentioned before Lombardy has some meat in the region. And I wanted to ask you, what about you? And specifically maybe what you ate at home. You talked about liking the yellow risotto. Did you eat a lot of meat growing up?
I think Italian in general, they do eat meat, but the consumption of meat is not the same level that, for instance, people eat meat in America or even in England. Because although we have many plates with meat, but then at the same time it's almost there's also lots of not vegetarian option, but it's still part. It's very plant based, even what you would eat at home, and then you would have maybe a bit of a couple of slices of prosciutto, or you would have a small steak or whatever, like scaloppine vitello, which is veal, but it's not really meat heavily cuisine. Again, it depends on the household, but I grew up eating a variety of food. But mainly my granny, she was making sure that I was eating lots of veg and lots of fruit. And,
that's good.
And I've tried to have a healthy.
I just watched that Hack Your Health documentary. It talks about how you should have different varieties of vegetables and fruits. I think 20 to 30 per week. So my fiance and I have been tracking and seeing if we're actually reaching that. We did last week, so I'll keep you updated on this week.
Amazing. I'm sure my granny, she was making an amazing job. But for her, it was just natural. That's because also bear in mind that, the consumption of meat really exploded after the Second World War. before people didn't used to eat meat as much. If they would eat meat much, once every fortnight, that was it. So traditionally, like, lots of the dishes were, as I said, like plant-based. And then, and then obviously with the economic boom after the Second World War, people started eating meat more on a daily basis. So growing up, yes, I would eat like some sorts of meat, maybe not on a daily basis, but almost, at least one meal a day would have like some sorts of like meat or fish. And then another interesting thing about Milan. Milan is in the mainland, so it's not close by to the sea at all. I think that the closest sea is about like 200 kilometers. But for some reason, it's got the biggest fish market in Italy. So all the fresh fish from all the different ports in Italy is get taken first to Milan, and then from Milan gets, it goes everywhere in Italy.
That is interesting.
So it's very interesting because everybody says that in Milan you can probably eat the freshest fish in Italy.
Even though it's in this, like, not in the center of Italy.
Exactly.
It's landlocked, if you will.
I mean, of course, if you go to the small village, by the sea, and there's the fishermen catching the fish there, that's
and selling it off of
even
the boat
fresher
on the
than
dock.
that. But, like from, in any city, it's probably like the best fish you can find in Milan.
That is incredibly interesting. And I mean, I know that Italians really care about food and where it's coming from. On menus here, there's incredible detail, unlike anything I'd ever seen in the US before. And it'll tell me that my meat is from here and my cheese is from this town. Is it culturally normal to talk amongst each other about where your food is coming from? And not just maybe the town, but how it's actually sourced and really how the food is made. Is that something that Italians talk about amongst each other?
Right. Yeah. Italian talks a lot about food in general. It's kind of a bit of an obsession. And we're so proud as well of our food. So yeah, there's lots of talk between friends and family where this food is coming from. I mean, obviously with modern society, it's less easy to do that, because when you go and buy food from the supermarket, you can read on the label, but it's always like food that is mass produced. There's lots of shops where you can buy food that is like grown locally. There's lots of restaurants as well now that are part of this. It's a kind of like, it's a group of restaurants that is called the slow food.
Can you actually describe slow food? Because I see it all the time on menus, but I don't actually know exactly what it is.
Yeah, okay. Slow food, as by the name, it means that it's all food that is is produced locally. So they call it also cibo a chilometro zero. So it's 0 kilometers food. So it's basically all local food produced.
So food that has traveled less than 0 kilometers to get here.
Yes.
To get to your plate.
Or like very locally produced, basically. Okay. And that's the idea behind it, is basically to bring, so it's all like seasonal food, obviously, local food. So it's got like, the aim is to encourage the production of food. So that's the idea, is to influence and to help small farmers as well, and to try to move away from mass production. And so lots of like restaurants, they kind of like pride themselves to have this slow food stickers outside their door.
It's like this colorful swirly circle, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then and then also it's a form of marketing as well for them, because then people that goes to that restaurant, they know that they're eating certain kind of food, and they know that it's not coming from supermarkets or like mass produced. It's not frozen. Everything is fresh, everything is local, and everything is seasonal. So that's the idea behind the slow food, basically.
You talked about mass produced food, and I'd like to have you talk a little bit about the film that you mentioned earlier on in the interview.
Right. Yeah. So I've just made this film called Food for Profit. And as the title says, it's trying to expose the mass production of food and the logic of profit that is behind it. That goes so basically because of the logic of profit, the big agri group, they they don't care about the animal welfare or even the welfare of the workers that work in those plants, destruction of community, but also there are also lots of other problems that come out of mass producing meat. We're concentrating on meat, so we're concentrating on intensive farming in Europe, and also the link between big agri group and politics at the European Parliament. So the film is also trying to expose how meat lobbies are trying to influence European Parliament and politics. And they're really powerful lobby, and they're able to move lots of money. We're talking about almost 400 million euros. Sorry, 400 billion euros, not millions.
Wow.
So it's a lot of money. And
even million was a lot, but
yes, it's billions.
Wow.
And it's all taxpayer money of Europeans, which is basically diverted to this industry that is, as I was saying, is like, polluting Europe, mistreating animals, mistreating workers, and creating lots of other problems like the destruction of community, but even new pandemics that can come from intensive farms, the problem with antibiotic resistance. It's quite a sad picture and scenario. But what we really wanted to do with this film was to kind of like debunk the myth that in Europe, the quality of food is way better than everywhere else. And I know that we've been talking about until now how amazing Italian food is. And it is, and there is like, there's a small percentage of production of food in Italy, which is amazing, of really high quality. But unfortunately, the majority of the food, because everything is mass produced, we need to cater to big population. People live in cities. They are not able to access food in a more traditional way of production. So everything is mass produced, and meat especially is mass produced in intensive farms all over Europe. And, in America, 99% of the meat eaten in America is produced in intensive farms. And, and for us European, it's crazy to think about that. And we pride ourselves, no, we're not like in America or China where, production of food is really bad. But actually, when you actually go in and look into it, 90% of the meat consumed in Europe as well is coming from intensive farms. And intensive farms in Europe or America are not that much different. So that means that also the meat that we consume here is not of a high quality. And this is a problem. And also this is something that basically Europeans are not well aware of. And one of the reasons probably like the film is having a great impact in Italy at the moment, and we're about to launch it everywhere in Europe as well now, is because basically people are kind of like shocked to see what they're actually eating and how politicians are complicit into this industry. And, and because the other thing that we found out through this film, through this investigative film, is the fact that this 400 millions package of taxpayer money, it's been pushed through the Green Deal. And, when people see that, all this money is pushed through the Green Deal that is supposed to be, by the name, right, a Green Deal, supporting like, organic producers and small farmers. And then they realize that actually the money is going to the big agri group that are doing the opposite of what the Green Deal should be doing. People are getting really angry at the moment. It's kind of like creating, like this film has almost started a movement here in Italy, at least, more than 1.5 million watched it already. So it's becoming a kind of like a case study at the moment. So now we're launching it like soon we're going to be launching in Europe everywhere.
Congratulations.
And so we'll see how it goes. But yes, the whole point of the film, as I was saying, was like to try to debunk this myth that we as European or Italian or like, Spanish, French, our food quality is amazing and everything. And yes, there is a small part of it that is really high quality, but the majority of people, the masses, they eat quite poorly produced food, unfortunately.
It is unfortunate. And it is true. I mean, I've heard that throughout America. And it's also a thought that I've had, which is that the food is better here. And it's interesting because I try to always avoid saying European because I do know how different, obviously, each country in Europe is. But of course, there is the EU and there are similarities. And so there's a lot of factors to that. But I mean, I do still think that, as far as I know, there are a lot of foods here that are banned because they are known to be bad for you that are not yet banned in the US. And so I still believe that that Europe, the EU has set laws that protect their people a little bit better than America. Sorry, American listeners, it's just my opinion, but it is important to be informed. And so your documentary really opened my eyes and shocked me, but in a way where I want to know where my food is coming from. And now I live in Italy. Italy is my home. And so I want to know also, I do eat meat. So I want to know what's going on and to maybe I'll make changes. For example, I've already gone vegetarian within the walls of my home. So at home, no chicken, no meat, not even really fish, honestly, just a lot of tofu and lentils, chickpeas, seitan. My purposes for doing that was actually to reduce my carbon footprint to help with climate change. But after seeing the documentary, I might be making even more changes. Truthfully, so the first 5 minutes, it shows you chicken farms in Italy, and it is a very hard watch. I was in tears. I started crying, and I said, "Oh my God, I don't know if I'm going to get through this," but it's important to get through it. It's important to know what's going on so we can maybe help by electing better officials to make better decisions on our behalf. Something that I found interesting in the beginning was they talked about how different countries and different cultures see animals. And for example, some are pets and some are food. I'd like to break for a second from the documentary and ask you in Italy to tell us what animals typically are seen as pets and what animals are seen as food.
Yeah, for instance, in Italy, this is a good question because I know that, for instance, in America, rabbits are seen as pets, while in Italy, people eat rabbits. And, we all grew up eating rabbits, like you would eat roasted chicken, you would have a roasted rabbit. So, things are really culturally different. And, like in some places in Asia, they even eat the dogs. And for us, it feels like completely wrong. But like,
and you eat horse too, right?
Yeah.
In the US, you don't really see that on the menu.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, they're very particular. It's not that you could eat horse in every restaurant, or people don't usually eat horse at home. It's very interesting to see how different culture consider different animals as pets. But the whole point that we're making in the film is the fact that, if you see an animal as a pet, you almost consider them almost like people.
They have a soul.
Yeah, they have a soul, they have like feelings and everything. While if you just consider an animal as just a product to eat, basically, you don't see any of this. But all animals have a soul,
have
feelings. Like for instance, like pigs are like super intelligent animals. They're very social. They're very clever, and they have like lots of feelings. And you could actually, if you've spent some time with a pig, you could actually see in their eyes, and you can see how sweet they are. And it's exactly like a dog. That some pigs are even more intelligent than dogs, and they can get really attached to people. And they have like their own families. And so the way we're treating instead like pigs in factory farms is completely, I don't know, in my opinion, is completely wrong. But that would be to any animal, to any being, basically, to be treated in that way. I think it's absolutely awful, because it's not even a life. It's you're grown up in almost in a cage. You got no space. You got no social life, and basically you're just there to get fat as fast enough and then to be killed.
And I've seen the documentaries on something similar, in the US. And like you mentioned before, I thought, oh, the US, and this is my country and this is what they're doing, and I did think it was different and better. I guess I was almost hopeful that it was different and better somewhere else.
Of course, like for instance, in the US, everybody's got this picture of Italy, probably like farms in Italy is just like the idyllic
what you see in a
farm.
children's book.
Yeah, exactly. Like with
they're all
pigs and like
singing
chicken
and,
like roaming around and all happy.
Yeah.
But the reality, unfortunately, is that's not the reality, because it's basically, it's impossible to think that people could eat meat every day, go to the supermarket, buy meat for really cheap. You can probably buy, some chicken breast for like 4 or 5 euros. And how can that chicken cost so little?
Yeah.
Obviously, where it's coming from, but people don't think where it's coming from, really. They just buy it.
Yeah. And speaking of chickens, it talks a lot about, it's not just chickens, actually. The film talks a lot about antibiotic resistance forming, because antibiotics are getting fed to the animals and then we're eating them. And then when we need them, antibiotics are not going to be effective. I would like to talk a little bit about medicine in general in Italy. Some cultural differences that I've noticed from my personal experiences is that in the US, I have people very close to me in my life that if they sneeze, they go and they get antibiotics, which is just a way of saying that antibiotics are used quite often to treat almost anything. Even if, you're just not feeling well, it's like, well, take some antibiotics just to be safe. In Italy, so far, what I've noticed is that there's kind of this idea of natural healing. A pharmacist, I've many different cases of whether it was me or a friend or my fiance or my parents coming into town that needed to go to the pharmacy because there was a variety of different things wrong. And we were always given vitamins, supplements, something vegetable, something natural. Even my fiance calls tachipirina, which is for the Americans listening, it's paracetamol, which is for us, our brand is Tylenol, is the most common brand. But he says it's medicine, and he'll be super sick, and he's like, well, I just need to take my medicine, which is Tylenol. What's your perspective on that as an Italian? Is my perspective, do you think, accurate, or is it personal to my experiences?
I don't know, because I think in general Italians are very hypochondriac. They worry so much. The typical Italian mom would always like, put a scarf on. It's cold outside. We don't go out with the wet hair, or even in summer. So I think that Italians, in a way, they're very hypochondriac, and but yes, maybe there's their consumption of medicine is definitely not as much as in America, in a way that they rely more on some kind of traditional healing that is more through herbs, so herbal medicine, or more just even like a hot soup or things like this. But to be fair, I've noticed that in England they will give you paracetamol for everything, but they will never give you antibiotics. So they're very on it there with antibiotics.
Yeah, another example of a difference in the way that medicine is given US to Italy was with my Italian teacher. We were talking about extracting your wisdom teeth, or basically just extracting teeth. And we were talking about laughing gas. And so in the US, they give you laughing gas. And we're talking about how I'm really pain intolerant. So I actually asked to be put asleep for them to take my wisdom teeth. And she was so shocked, because she's like, what do you mean? What's laughing gas? She had no idea, because she said that they just give you local anesthesia and they pull the tooth and you see everything and you're fully conscious and fully aware. And that was a huge cultural shock. And I don't know, again, it could be, her experience could be regional. I don't know if that's all around Italy. Did you ever get teeth pulled in Italy, and did they just give you local anesthesia?
I didn't.
Okay.
But yes, I know, but also because some certain things are banned here. Some medicine that are legal in England, in the US, you can't purchase them here. In fact, it's quite interesting, because I got some friends that when they travel to the US, they just buy lots of medicine that are way stronger that you can't buy here, because if they feel sick or something, they got a stronger option, basically. So for instance, even with painkillers, I think that in America you have much stronger painkillers than here. Well, I noticed here in Italy as well, sometimes the doctor just prescribe you antibiotics for almost no reason.
Do you feel that doctors will prescribe antibiotics for no reason, but the general citizens actually don't opt for that? For example, I met a girl recently and she was like, I'm pretty sure I have a bladder infection, which is a pretty serious thing. And again, in my experience, and this is obviously, it could be personal to the family, the way you were raised, but if you had something like a bladder infection, you would definitely go to the doctor and they would probably prescribe you something like a medicine, like maybe an antibiotic. And she's like, no, she's like, I've just had it for 4 days. And she was in so much pain. She's like, no, I'm just going to let it ride. And, and then I mean, if in a week I still feel excruciating pain and it's not getting better, okay, then I'll see a doctor, I'll get medicine.
I think it's also like a generational thing. So like younger people are definitely more aware with alternative form of medicine, or like trying to heal your body in different ways, maybe even like through your diet, for instance. So I know lots of people that they stop eating, meat mainly and dairies for health reason. Simply because they decided to move to a plant-based diet because they think it's just better for their body, and you are less at risk of infections and so many things that basically and you do, like I switch also to a plant-based diet and you do feel better. I have to say,
even just doing it within my house, and then I'm open to eating more things when I'm outside of my home. When I switched, I felt healthier and I lost weight, which it's not something. It wasn't a goal of mine to lose weight, but I naturally just started to lose weight because of switching.
Yeah, exactly. And also like you just feel like lighter and healthier, and you got more energy. But then, as I was saying before, it's a generational thing, because I can see instead like older generation they rely much more, on going to the doctor all the time. And, they got this faith in Western medicine that is almost like, faith in God. And, they don't even question having to take some medicine that maybe have like some side effects and, and things like this. While I think that, younger people are, not all of them, but some younger people are just a bit more aware about different way of healing, basically.
That makes sense. Do you know anything about why Italian meat is banned to be imported into the US?
All right. So I thought it was the other way around. I thought that American meat is banned.
Oh, I'm sure it is. Is that true? Is it US meat is banned to be imported into Europe?
Yes, because I think there's only like a very small, like a handful of abattoir in America that they can sell meat to Europe, because of the way they process the meat. And lots of the meat is washed with chlorine, and in America
that's gross.
Yeah, it's not very nice. So, and it's illegal in Europe. So, most of the meat produced in America can't be sold in Europe. Okay. I didn't know about the other way around.
Well, I went to, the store Idilic. Mm-hmm. I went to Idilic in New York and tried to get Bresaola, sorry for my accent. And they said, well, this Bresaola is actually from, I forget, but it wasn't Italian. And they said, actually, no, we can't get Italian meat. We can't import Italian meat. So listen, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know the exact laws on import and export. But from what this employee at Idilic was telling me, they could not get, Bresaola, let's say from Italy, into the Idilic stores.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know this. I knew that it's banned the other way around, probably because as European we banned American meat. Maybe the American government decided to ban.
It could be
European meat as we're not happy about this, because I know that they've been trying to, especially now in England with Brexit. After Brexit, they've been trying to introduce American meat, but there's lots of like public opinion is really against it. And there's lots of campaign about, again, chlorinate chicken in America and all of this. So they still haven't managed to open the market to American meat. But obviously, American producer, they would love to open the market to Europe, because Europe, it's a huge market. It's 500 million people. So
it's a continent, of course.
Exactly.
Of course. My perception of Italy is that Italy really cares about the environment, given that everywhere I go, if there's any sort of forks and knives, they're usually compostable. The grocery store bags are compostable. I have 5 garbage bins in my house because we differentiate all of our garbage and recycle between glass and plastic and paper and organic foods and differentiated. So I was shocked. I was shocked to see intensive farming in Italy. I guess if I think about it now, of course, as you mentioned, how could so much meat be out there for sale and at so cheap if something like that wasn't going on? But I have to say I was really shocked.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I was almost shocked as well. Like before starting working on this documentary, it's not that I wasn't aware about it, but I didn't realize how big the problem was. And I think that's what's shocking most people that watches the film, especially like Europeans, because all the films on these subjects, I'm thinking about film like Cowspiracy or like Food Inc., What the Health, they're all American productions or Australian productions. So we as European, or Italian, we always think, this is just happening somewhere else. This is not about us. But then after our film was released, that's exactly what people are seeing. They say, sorry I don't want to swear, but
you can, we can beep you.
It's, like this is happening here as well. So it's a problem, and it's, I think that the film is a real eye opener for lots of people. And, we're hoping, that this will bring a change. And so people will start thinking about what they're eating more. Even if, like you said, there's lots of attention in Italy about food, but then not the food that is coming from supermarkets. People love in Italy to brag about, I've just been to this, restaurant in the countryside and the food was amazing. It was all local and everything. And that's true. But then what they're eating on a daily basis at home, like food that they buy from supermarkets, that's not their idea of amazing food that they're eating. They're actually eating quite low quality food.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining Italian for Sure, Pablo.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here, and hope all the best for you guys.
Thanks so much.
This is Italian for Sure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Italian for Sure. If you liked what you heard, make sure to hit the follow button wherever you listen to podcasts, and hit the subscribe button on YouTube. If you want to connect, find me on Instagram and TikTok at Italian for Sure, and let me know what you found most interesting. Until next time.